A new survey shows the progressive conservatives continue to have the advantage over the Liberals on day 6 of the election campaign. The Nanos survey commissioned by CTV News and CP24 finds the PC party has 35.4% support, followed by the Liberals at 30.4%, the NDP in third with 23.7%, and the Greens at 4.2%. Meantime, when it comes to preferred premier, Conservative leader Doug Ford, PC leader Doug Ford is still the top choice with 29%, but Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca is gaining some appeal. He's now in second place with 24.1%. NDP leader Andrea Horwath dropped to 20.3%, and Green Party leader Mike Schreiner is at 4%. 9% of residents said they were unsure. Now, the Nanos survey was commissioned by CTV News and CP24. It surveyed 500 Ontarians contacted randomly by cell phone and landline between May the 7th and May the 8th. The results have a margin of error of plus or minus 4.4, that is, so 4.4 percentage points, 19 times out of 20. Okay, so this poll comes just ahead of the first official leaders debate happening tomorrow afternoon in North Bay. But as candidates seem to suggest time and time again, and this is a common line by PC leader Doug Ford, the only poll that counts is on Election Day. So let's discuss the poll, tomorrow's debate, and new today, the Ontario Liberals, their costed platform. Joining us on our political panel tonight is Kim Wright. She is the principal at Wright Strategies, also an NDP consultant. James Lynn, he is an account director at Hill and Knowlton Strategies with some conservative perspective. And Colin McDonald, he's a principal with Navigator and provides some Liberal perspective for us tonight. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining us. Let's start with this latest poll here for just a moment. Colin, I'm going to start with you. So we see Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca picking up 7 percentage points here when we take a look at the first official week. Why do you think that is? Are people getting to know him, or is it for some voters anyone but Ford?
Well, no, I think it's that people are getting a chance to tune in. People are starting to hear a lot of good things from Mr. Del Duca and from the Ontario Liberal team. They're also just getting, as you said, they are just getting to know him. It is very difficult for the leader of an opposition party in Ontario to get much media coverage and to get much introduction to voters in advance of a campaign. So it really is important to hit the ground running in the first week of the campaign, which Mr. Del Duca and his team have done. They're culminating and rolling out the platform today. I know we're going to talk about that with a lot of interesting pieces and a lot of points in there that people will look at and say, these Liberals have been listening. These Liberals understand what needs to be done and what needs to be done differently, and they're increasingly interested. And I think doubly from that, if you're a Tory or if you're a PC member, you're looking at this and you're slightly concerned that yet again you appear to be butting up against a ceiling and potentially only have one direction to go. And for the New Democrats, it has to be a bit dispiriting to see that after 4 years in official opposition, they've been unable to build any momentum, really, it would appear, over the first week.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to talk to Kim about that, but I'm going to go to you, James, for just a moment. So today, the Ontario Liberals, they released their costed platform. It does not come cheap, $16.4 billion over 4 years. It's going to require new taxes for the rich. It assumes some of the progressive conservative highway programs will be stopped, for example. But Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca said today that, he will balance the budget within 4 years. However, not at the cost of, let's say, smaller class sizes, or not when it comes to, let's say, if it's between the balancing the budget and revolutionizing long-term care, it's revolutionizing long-term care. I'm wondering what you think of that message when you consider the lead he's received over the PC leader.
Well, balancing the budget, that's something we've heard before from the Liberal Party, and fortunately, we did see that they did break that promise in the last election, or prior to the last election. Going back to what Colin said, the Liberal Party has the strongest brand in Canada and in Ontario. The problem with that faces, Mr. Del Duca is that he's coming in from third place. His party in the last election, was reduced to an unofficial party status, and so he is in a way coming from behind as well. And so for voters who recall what happened in 2018 and what happened for the 15 years prior to that when the Liberals were in power, is that they now have a challenge with credibility. When they were in power for 15 years, why didn't they do the things they're saying they'll do now, or why did they do the things that they didn't do? It's a question of whether they can be trusted to actually fulfill and go through with the promises that they're putting in this platform.
And that's always been the question. I mean, the Conservatives have consistently said to the Liberals, you know, you had 15 years to do this, and that has been the criticism. I want to stay with you, James, for just one moment, because according to our Nanos poll, when you look at the breakdown of women versus men, the women so far seem to prefer Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca. Why do you think that is, and how can Doug Ford turn that around?
Well, I mean, these polls are a snapshot, so we'll see how they change. Of course, trends do matter, so we'll have to see if the trends do change rather than just, the numbers. I think that with Ford, he actually has made a lot of promises that really do affect all people in Ontario, whether you're male, female, or anything else. These are promises that are very much forward-looking. It's about investing in key infrastructure. It's about investing in people. Making sure that the economy is growing so that people have jobs. And of course, there are commitments to education as well, not just in commitments in programming, but for new schools as well, and new hospitals, new highways that actually help people get across this province more easily. So I think there's a lot in the Ontario platform, or the Ontario PC platform, that should appeal to all groups within Ontario. But another interesting thing is, this party, and we haven't seen this in Ontario in quite a while, but this party, the PC party, is actually running on their actual record.
Right. Well, because they're in government, so they have that benefit as the incumbents.
Right, but often with elections, you'll see a reset button. I think you saw that in 2018, where instead of running on the record, you ran on sort of new promises. This government is actually running to continue what they've already done for the last 4 years, which is quite a lot in terms of the transformation, the investments they've made in infrastructure.
I'm going to get to Kim for just a moment. When I was talking about gender, Kim, some of the things that, we have the teachers' unions and also the nurses, they have butt heads with the PCs. These are, in many cases, careers that are primarily dominated by women. Today, we saw that OSSTF endorse NDP candidates, but we see in the latest poll, and I know the candidates say the only poll that counts is on election day, but we're talking about the poll. Andrea Horwath in third place. She is right now the official opposition. What does she need to do in tomorrow's debate to, I guess, reconvince people and regain their confidence?
Yeah, it's a very interesting phenomenon. Once an election happens, Andrea and people, especially in those debates, those head-to-head comparisons, how do people react to her? How do people feel like she represents them? And in every election, they do believe that she is that best premier. Now, she also needs to showcase she's got an extraordinary team around her, and she's doing that. It's interesting, though, that James talks about the record of the Conservative government, considering that everything they talked about in the last election, they either have broken those promises, including to end hallway medicine and to strengthening the autism funding, but they've also just continued to make it worse or kick it down the road. Their budget a couple of weeks ago was, I call it a unicorn in every pot. It was, if you reelect us, maybe we'll sort of possibly get there. I mean, they talk about the gas tax, which they promised last time, but they still aren't doing it until maybe after this election. And as for the Liberals, their so-called costed platform relies on potentially renegotiating the childcare deal, which we finally just got after 30 years of Liberals not doing it. So I have some questions and concerns about when they use those terms, costed. On top of which, this buck or ride scheme the Liberals keep talking about, first of all, will raid the fare box. It will not enhance my transit experience or your transit experience or anybody else in Ontario's transit experience. It actually robs a transit funding to a significant amount. They've earmarked about $375 million in this costed platform for transit. But the operating funding of TTC alone is $2.2 billion, and you're not going to get to that.
So I just want to jump in. We reached out to the TTC a while ago about this, and they said they're taking a look at the breakdown of numbers. But when you talk about unicorns, one of my media colleagues actually said to the Liberal leader today, "Isn't that what elections are in some of these costed platforms?" She called it unicorns and rainbows because you're putting out numbers, you're making promises. With the figures that maybe you have available or based on speculation or even good estimates or perhaps fair estimates in the hopes that you can, really win over voters and that they'll give you a shot. In saying that, though, when we take a look at the Liberals' costed platform and the NDP, they put out a platform, but when are we going to see the costing? I mean, tomorrow as we head into the debate and 24 days until the election, the Liberals have come out with this, and voters will be looking to the opposition to see it.
Yeah, they're absolutely going to get costing. We only got the numbers from the Conservative government during the budget, so we're still not sure if those are actual accurate numbers. But we're going to get one shortly. But here's the reality: Stephen Del Duca, when he was running for Liberal leader, said very clearly on a panel that they went a little too to the left, a little too progressive, and he also said that governments should not do not have to be the ones involved in everything. So the reality is Stephen Del Duca will say a lot of things, but he's not really kind of big on the follow through, much like the Liberals. The other thing, Christina, that I'm concerned about, and if I were a Liberal, I'd be very concerned about, they have a leader that doesn't have a seat in the legislature.
Yes, I want to get to this.
He lost last election. So, this mythical, he's going to jump to the premier's chair. He may not even win his own seat if the polls that I'm seeing are to be believed.
Okay, we have 1 minute left. I want to get to that and give James and Colin an option here. But yes, Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca does not have a seat. That's not unheard of. Most recently in federal politics, we saw that with Jagmeet Singh. He eventually won. So what I want to point out is we have a minute left. Colin, I'll start with you, then James, then Kim. If you can give me a quick sentence ahead of tomorrow's debate, what is it you expect to see, or what does the candidate, let's say your candidate, that the perspective you're bringing tonight, need to do to have a best foot forward in the first official debate? Colin, for the Liberals, what does Del Duca need to do tomorrow?
I think Stephen Del Duca just needs to continue talking about the important pieces that Ontario Liberals have been talking about for 4 years now, and have solidified in a platform that is. And it's interesting the amount of heat that is being put towards the leader of the Ontario Liberal Party here for releasing a costed platform. That used to be the thing that we would expect of our politicians. I know it's certainly something that voters expect. So for the government to have put out a budget and then immediately adjourn the House without allowing it to go to scrutiny, and for the NDP, who were in official opposition, to somehow not have had time, or perhaps not the resources, or perhaps just not the willingness to cost their platform, is something that should give people a lot of concern and cause a lot of questions about where are the priorities for both of those parties, and what are they not telling folks about their platforms. So I think for Mr. Del Duca, he's going to be reintroducing himself. He's going to be talking about things that are important to the voters of Ontario, and he's going to be continuing to build that momentum.
Okay, because he has to win his seat as well as an MPP in Vaughan, where he was previously, years back, a Liberal MPP. James, for those who perhaps want fresh perspective on PC leader Doug Ford, who are a bit on the fence about his, let's say, how he led this province through the pandemic, if someone wants to keep an open mind, what should they be looking for?
Well, as you said, Christina, the Premier has the benefit of having been the Premier and is still the Premier. And so he can speak to his record. And to go back to popularity, we saw that during the pandemic, Premier Ford's popularity actually went up. People appreciated what he did during the pandemic, his steadiness, his calmness, his correctness on the type of messaging that was needed for that time. And so I think a reminder of that Premier Ford will be beneficial to him. The other benefit is that as the Premier, he actually has done things for Northern Ontario, and that's where the debate is happening tomorrow. So he can speak. The other platforms may have unicorns in them, as Kim said, but the PC platform is a budget. Mm-hmm. It has the record of what the PC government actually has done, especially for people in the north. And
I should point out, Green Party leader Mike Schreiner will be in the debate as well. Kim Wright, quickly on the NDP perspective, I want to point out NDP leader Andrea Horwath has been leader now for 13 years. I mean, if she does not form the official opposition again, I think it's safe to say her leadership will be in question. So what does she need to do tomorrow to again, perhaps maybe secure her second term as the official opposition?
So, look, I expect Andrea Horwath to show what she'll be like as leader. She saw earlier today, she released a Northern Ontario specific platform that talks to transportation in the north, broadband internet, the travel guarantees for Northern Ontario. If you're somebody who lives in the north and you have to travel to Southern Ontario to get medical care because that's the only game in town, that is very expensive. So those ways that she connects with people, she's going to show why she is better than the boys on the stage, and that she is ready to take over as Premier.
Okay, Kim, James, Colin, we always appreciate this respectful debate, but the actual leaders' debate is tomorrow, just after 1 o'clock in Northern Ontario. Thank you so much. We'll have you back, and 24 days to go, so we'll be watching as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.